problem. You just let me know.
Awesome.
So what are you doing?
Nothing.
Nothing? Why not?
Trying to get on this Lifestyle Radio website.
Sounds like a cool website.
Yeah, it's alright. Oh, wait, I might have it.
You might have it.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
The opinions expressed during this show are those of the individual participants and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of their associated organizations or Lifestyle Radio.
Good evening. I'm Coulter Wonkite. I'm already into the 420, damn it.
You know I blame it on industry. I blame it on my own hypocrisy. It's education and politicians. No one's willing to step up and speak.
We do,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I wish him great success in the future. And I think it's he's a fabulous man, and
Yeah.
I'm honored to know that he's a
Okay.
Canadian.
It's good to see. Exactly. Yes, exactly. Okay, now to move on to the next article. And, and it's something to deal with things that I think we're going to see more and more of this in the future. And I'm sure we'll be discussing this one with our guest as we get after we bring him in. But this thing about the TTC in Toronto and this lady who's lost her job over medicinal cannabis.
Yeah, I mean, I feel for this woman. I'm a retired transit driver. That's what I
didn't
did
know that.
for a living. Yeah, that's what I did for a living before I was an advocate. Prior to my car accident, I was on my way home from work when I had my automobile accident, and I worked for Markham Transit, which is now part of TTC.
Yeah,
I used to run on Davis Drive and New Lock Drive, and I operated the buses there, and that's what I did for a living.
Wow.
I'm a transit operator as well. So I can feel for this woman's situation because, there was a time right after my accident, after my rehab, when I was going through my rehab and stuff, and I was really hopeful to get back to work at some point.
Yeah.
It eventually came to be that was not going to be ever happen. But if I would have been able to go back to work, the only way I could do it is with my meds.
Well, this is what this lady was talking about when she was doing pharmaceutical drugs. It brought her pain level down to 8, and she felt spacey and sleepy. But she was allowed to work.
Yeah.
And now with the cannabis, her pain level's down to 4.
Yeah.
Better for her employer as far as her ability to work.
And she's not impaired.
And she's not even impaired. She's using a CBD oil.
That's right. And she's admittedly stating, listen, I felt impaired when you told me I should come to work on these meds. I was impaired. I was lightheaded. I was not able to operate a motor vehicle properly or safely, yet your record said my limits were good and I could do it.
Mm-hmm.
Where now I'm taking cannabis oil, I'm not impaired, and you're telling me I can't drive.
Do it. Yeah.
How backwards is this?
I see they offered her a different position within the company, but she said it would have to require cutting her salary in half.
Yeah. I mean, and it's not. I cannot wrap my head around it. There has to be an allowance within the regulations for medical patients. And I've said this from the get-go upon the announcement of legalization. This is going to come on the backs of patients.
And it's going to be so...
is. Oh, my God, patients are paying the price. I mean, people have been operating equipment. People have been doing their jobs on a regular basis for over a decade with legal cannabis medication. We have all flown under the radar because there was no testing for it. Now we have testing, and they're like, oh, you, and you're all fired, and you can't do your jobs no more. Well, guess what, buddy? We've been doing it this way for 10 fucking years.
Yeah. That's right. We have been. Flying on the radar for sure. All right. Well, let's bring our guest in. I'm sure you may have something to say about a couple of our news articles. Okay, at this time, I'd like to introduce our guest, and the person I described as someone who likes to educate the doctors about medicinal cannabis. We'd like to welcome back Dr. Ira Price to the Pace Radio Show. Hello, Dr. Price. How are you?
Hey, guys. Thanks so much for having me. I think that's the quietest I've ever stayed for the longest when I have an opinion. I'm like, just goddamn introduce me because I'm ready to go.
Okay, we will unleash you. What do you got? What I see, you're actually involved in that last story.
Yeah. So, I mean, yes, I was interviewed as an independent on that story with the unfortunate bus driver who's I guess they're not letting her work. I mean, it comes down to defining what impairment is. First, I think everything that was said in the article, the reporter really wanted to do an accurate job, and I think she did quite a good job of reporting the facts in this case. Yeah. The problem is we don't have a level of impairment. We don't have an accurate level to define what impairment is. I agree nobody should operate heavy machinery, or I wouldn't want my kid on that bus if the person or individual driving it was impaired. We don't have an accurate level, not just for cannabis. We don't have an accurate level for anything other than alcohol. Alcohol is really the only thing that we have a very good, strong correlation between blood levels and impairment that we use something called standard field sobriety testing for. That's that finger to nose stuff and, you know, look at my eyes, walk the straight line, all that stuff. And so we know that it's I mean, when you do it in the field, it's not accurate, but when you do it in a monitored environment, it's pretty accurate. And we know that you can breathe into a hose and we have those numbers for alcohol. We don't have them for drug driving. We don't have them for cannabis. And until we do, I don't think that we can specifically say this is the number and we're done. You're impaired, 0 tolerance. It just doesn't work like that. We know that cannabis impairs differently. Definitely, if you're using like anything over, let's say even 5 to 10% THC, and depending on how much you're using, then yeah, possibly you could be impaired. But you're definitely not going to be impaired from 0.1% because she's probably using hemp. And I mean, you can legally get hemp under 3%. You can get it in a store that has less than 3% THC in it. And that's like you could just vitamin supplements that have CBD have more THC than what she's using. So will impairment happen? No. The question that was raised is, will it be positive in her urine? Well, yeah, it's going to be positive in your urine for THC, but that doesn't define impairment. Urinating on a stick doesn't equal impairment.
No.
You have to have right? You have to have an objective measure of impairment. And
all it shows is consumption.
That's right. It shows consumption. Consumption doesn't define impairment. And so,
to let us expand on that a little bit now and explain why that is. And it's because we all metabolize THC at different rates. Everybody metabolizes it differently. Body structure comes into play. Weight comes into play. Usage comes into play. Dosage comes into play. And method of consumption comes into play. So all of these things affect whether or not you will receive any or how strong any euphoric effects will happen when you consume this. Is this correct?
Yeah, I mean, that'll happen with any medication, any drug, any herb. We all metabolize things very differently. And certainly with cannabis. So, yeah, metabolism plays an effect. But I'm sure there is a generalizable level that we're going to eventually get to where we can say the general public using this amount of cannabis X who blows this amount of air into a pipe that now says that says this has how many nanograms you are. Now that equals impairment for the general population. We need that 100%. We need it for every drug. We need it for opioids. We need it for benzos. We need it for all impairing type of medications. We just don't have it yet. So to say, you can't, we have a zero drug policy. I'll tell you, if they go to human rights may actually probably side with the bus driver in that case. I don't know for certain, of course, but when I've acted as expert witness on cases like this, you can't just have a zero tolerance policy, especially when it comes to a medicine. If you're using it recreationally, whatever, that's not the area that we're looking at for her in particular. We're looking at a medicine, and as a medicine, you can't have a zero tolerance policy. We know it's a medication. We know it's safe. It's safer than its alternatives, which are like opioids in her case. And so you can't just say no. And and so I don't think it's going to end there. That's for sure.
Well, I certainly hope not. I mean, because all eyes are on this. So, I mean, if they get away with this, that's detrimental to patients across the country in every job, in every area, in every industry.
Like this woman here, she's using 0.1% THC. Like, how much lower can you go?
You can't. No, that's legal. That's THC. That's like in hemp. You could go to the store and buy a supplement with that amount.
Yeah.
So it's not. I don't think it. And I think even their expert stated that it wouldn't cause impairment, but it will cause positive urine sampling. And so I think that's what we need to be careful of is not equating a positive urine stick with impairment. It just tells us that they've consumed it. And what metabolite is it that's causing them to what metabolite actually causes you to be that impaired, to cause impairment? So we even have to go even further than that. And I think eventually, I think the onus is on the government not just to roll over and say, okay, we have a zero tolerance policy. There has to be, if you're going to legalize it, you have to provide a proper evidence-based understanding of impairment. And you can't just say, this is it, because it's not it. And I'll tell you, our judicial system will tell the government, no, this isn't it, as they have over and over in the past. Problem is they just want a quick fix. It was, it's holiday season. Everybody wanted out of the office, so they came up with these arbitrary numbers, and or they're saying, forget it, it's a zero tolerance policy, and it's just lazy politics.
There you go, from Dr. Ira Price.
Well, no,
welcome to the show.
Pace Radio. That was on Pace Radio. Dr. Ira Price. That's my pen name.
Yes.
That's
we're gonna see that so often. I think it's gonna be coming up.
Yeah. So I started doing this thing where I'm consulting for companies, because what companies need to understand is that they need to have an understanding of cannabis, right? And I think that's super important, understanding and being educated on it, and not just giving a definitive, uneducated answer. It's the duty of the employer and the onus of the government to be educated on things like impairment.
Yeah, well, I'm going to get into the employer part of it. I'm in Northern Ontario, largely the town that I am in, Timmins, Ontario, largely a mining community. There's, lots going on in the industry and the mining community. Many patients that have not disclosed they are patients are very afraid for their jobs at the moment. Most of the mines are decided to arbitrarily implement random testing programs that started at the beginning of this year. So basically, when you swipe in, your number goes up and you do a mouth swab. And it's checking for a few different opiates, I think PCP or something, and along with cannabis is in there now. So the non-disclosure
PCP
of them being,
cannabis.
Yeah, of course, they go hand in hand, right? Of course. But, all right. So, but patients that have not disclosed that they are patients and that they are using this or a medicine are just shaking in their boots right now, because they're saying if you'll immediately go for a urine sample. If you test positive, it's grounds for immediate dismissal. And they are not accepting that anybody's a patient. They think in their views, for some of the companies, if you're using cannabis as a medicine, then you're a safety hazard as soon as you walk on the site, even if you work in the office.
Well, my thought is there's going to be a lot of judicial challenges to that. There already have been. There's already some precedent set, and those companies are going to find themselves in a predicament, because you can't just have a zero tolerance policy. Not when it comes to medicine. Now, of course, once we have a defined impairment level objectively, you can say this is the level at which you cannot be in, operating heavy machinery or in a dangerous environment, or an environment that predisposes one who is, using cannabinoids to being impaired. But currently, we don't have that. So, yes, I think they have to administer an objective test for that, and we just don't have it yet. So that's why I think they're all coming up with these zero tolerance policies, but they don't fly when it comes to human rights violations. They have the right, patients have the right to be treated, and modified work being found, or define what impairment is.
Yeah, because most of the patients that I know, they only consume, after work. When they get home, they take their meds at night. Most people I know, it's either for pain or for sleep. So they're taking something before they go to bed. And when they wake up, if they test positive, they're in trouble.
Yeah, and
they will test positive. Sorry.
That's
The TTC driver, she was taking it at night after she got home from work.
Yeah, that's right. And you're waking up in
That's
the
right.
morning and you're testing positive. So now what do you do?
Right. So now you're in a tough situation because you test positive. You use something the night before. These are the cases that come up and end up going through the judicial system, and that's where they have to define objective using the best evidence that we have. You're not going to be impaired the next morning after using cannabinoid. You're looking at 12 hours later. You're not impaired. I would say for the majority of people. I mean, perhaps maybe somebody has really horrible metabolism. I've never seen it. But, something, can keep them impaired for days. I don't know. But it's definitely not cannabis. We know the half-life of it. We have really good understanding of those things in the science. And even when Health Canada wrote their guidelines, they weren't fully understood at the time when they wrote them. We know these things now. And one thing, those even their regulation needs updating. And we know that we need objective data. So I don't think 12 hours later is somebody who's going to be impaired. And I don't know any physician who would suggest they are unless they're getting paid a lot of money to say it.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I seen one post there a while back where they were talking about 6 hours after consumption.
Yeah. My suggestion to my patients is if you're inhaling cannabis, inhalational cannabis, we know very well, it's almost immediate onset. Your acute effects last about anywhere up to 45 to 2 hours max. After that, it's, the acute impairment, if you're going to have any, is going to be gone. And so my patients, I say for driving or whatnot, 4 hours after inhalational, and you're looking upwards of 6 to maybe 8 hours max after ingesting THC. This doesn't even include CBD. This is purely THC being the only,
right.
And we don't, and that's something else. Are we differentiating between THC and CBD here? No, they're saying the word cannabis altogether.
Right.
So I would say it's a mess, to be honest. I don't think they fully thought it through. I think they were just trying to push through regulation. Because they left it to the last minute. Everyone's trying to go on holidays, and now they have these random numbers that really don't mean very much. And I know the data and I know the evidence on it because I do research on impairment. That's one of my areas is looking at impairment.
Speaking of which, we kind of got right into the conversation, which is always great. We never really properly introduced you yet. And for those listeners out there that may not be aware of who the heck it is that's talking on the radio here, that is Dr. Ira Price. He is an MD out of the Hamilton area. He was an ER doctor. He runs a clinic called Synergy. It's a cannabinoid medical clinic in Hamilton, Ontario. He regularly educates other physicians on the topics of cannabinoid therapy, and he's consulted by the media for interviews and commentary on cannabis-related issues on a regular basis. Dr. Ira, we at the beginning of our show, we were talking about another doctor who has just been recently recognized, Dr. Ernest Small, of course, and now here you are doing your groundbreaking research. I mean, you've got stuff going on in your clinic where you help people. You have dinners, you have yoga ceremonies, you have, all kinds of different things going on in your clinics to help patients, as well as the cannabinoid education. I mean, your plate is full for sure, because I know you had a busy day today as well, with some other advocates that we all know and love so well, Miss Amy Brown and Miss Abby Roach.
Yeah, they're awesome. I was, thank you, by the way, for that introduction. I have a clinic that I opened in Burlington, and we do, of course, it's still working with cannabis, turned it into more of a natural pain and wellness center, because when we look at cannabis and we're treating a patient, we can't just treat a part of a patient. We have to treat a whole patient. And just giving somebody a medication it's just not the answer. We got to treat the whole person. So using cannabis in line with things like exercise, and in line with things like mindfulness training, and in line with things like yoga and stuff like that. That's really where we're finding this major benefit. Truth is, we're doing a research project now and looking at even our preliminary results. It is for industry, so I can't go into too many details, but I'll tell you our preliminary results. We have like an 89% success rate at decreasing of patients who are who are enrolled in the study at decreasing their opioids. And about 68 to 72% of them are off of opioids 100%. It's insane. Like when I looked at when I saw the results of and I'm not doing the data collection because I'm the primary investigator, so I have to stay neutral in that. But I see some of the preliminary results, and I'm like, this is insane. Well, how is it that people are still out there saying cannabis doesn't have any benefit? It doesn't make sense. We're in the middle of the worst opioid crisis we've ever encountered, and Ontario is like the worst of the worst for these things, and for opioid for the opioid abuse or opioid crisis. And we have something else out there that can help. Yeah, it has its side effects. Yeah, we can't just say, hey, it's a catch-all for everybody. But we have a deeper toolbox now, and we can't deny that. And so the work that not just myself, like the doctors you were mentioning earlier, and other people that are out there advocating, like, you know, we've got Amy and we've got you guys, we've got everybody out there advocating. I just think that, you know, we need to come together as a community and be more of a political voice, so that they recognize that we're not just sitting inside on the couch munching out. Yeah. And when we do that, that's when those things are really going to change. Even the legislation that's coming through, which is like a quasi legalization, is going to change as well.
Yeah, I think as a community, we're doing a fairly good job of, you know, being recognized as regular parts of society. You know, we all are operating our businesses. We all are raising our families. More people are out in the open about being in the cannabis industry, having some affiliation with cannabis use, whether it be recreational, so to speak, or whether it be for medicinal. I think more people are becoming open and saying, yeah, hey, you know what? I'm a professional and I use this as a medicine. And I think that's pushing us places. But it needs to happen more often, and we need to come together as one in one political front. I agree with that 100%. That's where we're lacking, you know, unity and some sort of a force.
Yeah, for sure. You know, I look at what it looks like, what the landscape in Canada looks like versus, you know, I started doing some things in the U.S. I started with a partner of mine in California. I started a retreat called Cannabis Retreats. It's a 5-day all-inclusive sort of experiential cannabis experience where, you know, it's all cannabis-infused food. We do ceremony and meditation, and then education and lectures all around cannabis as a plant. And when I look at the community of California and I look at our community here, I see a community there that honestly, the way that even their businesses, they're all there for each other to help each other grow, whether they're competitors or not. Yeah. And, you know, we have 5 different grow companies and, you know, and a whole bunch of other, you know, smaller businesses all working together and trying to promote each other and cross-promoting and just really being there for each other, a real big community. And I think that's what here in Canada and specifically Ontario, I think we can use a little bit more of is that community and coming together. We do have it, but I do think it can be a little bit stronger, like you just mentioned.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. You were going to try and say something there, Al?
Well, no, I'm sitting back listening. Well, it's almost break time. Are they going to get done before we go to break?
Listen, we could keep chatting forever about it. But
yes. Well, hey, why don't we go for that break and then we'll continue chatting afterwards.
All right, sounds good.
All right, everybody else out there in Radio Land, they're going to hear the Killing Time Band. As always, I always try to match the guest and the song in some way. And this time, I believe our guests would agree that an ounce is an ounce of goodness. Then after the break, Kim and I will continue our conversation with Dr. Ira Price. This is the award-winning Pace Radio Show here at lifestyleradio.net.
Least expected. Ounce of goodness, hand it out to one and all.
Canada, the time to act is now. These days, your customers are seeking variety. Increase your earning potential by expanding your inventory with CC Nexus, Canada's largest cannabis seed wholesaler. CC Nexus stocks over 60 reputable breeders, including Canuck seeds, with a wealth of autoflower, regular, feminized, and CBD strains. All first-time customers will receive a free pack of Canuck seeds, plus a mug, t-shirt, and additional promotional materials. Add strains and increase your profit with CC Nexus, your Canadian-owned and operated wholesaler of cannabis seeds. Discreet, worldwide stealth shipping from Canada, supporting you locally. Call today, 1-844-843-7995, 1-844-843-7995, or visit us at ccnexus.global.
A big thank you to our listeners. Because of you, you're listening to the award-winning Pace Radio Show here on Lifestyle Radio.
The following is a public service announcement from the Canadian Therapeutic Cannabis Partners Society. The Canadian Therapeutic Cannabis Partners Society is a non-profit organization dedicated to ensuring improved access to therapeutic cannabis and cannabis byproducts in Canada. With a federal government that has committed to legalizing cannabis, we feel it is our duty to ensure that the medicinal use of cannabis doesn't get lost in the process and that there are clear distinctions made between the medicinal and recreational use of cannabis. It is our mission to ensure that government regulation doesn't get in the way of a sick, disabled, or terminally ill person's right to use or produce this amazing natural health product. If you would like to get involved, you can contact us on the internet. www.canadiantherapeuticCannabisPartners.com, on Facebook, CTCP Society, or search Canadian Therapeutic Cannabis Partners.
CTCP now operates a medicinal cannabis signing clinic. If you want to grow your own medicinal cannabis and are located anywhere in Canada, then I'd like to suggest that you give them a call. They can be reached at 1-613-967-9888. That's 1-613-967-9888, and grow on with CTCP.
Man, have you been to Canadays yet? Canadays, Campbellford's premier cannabis culture shop at 19 Bridge Street West. They've got bongs, oil rigs, grinders, and papers. Everything you need for consumption. They've got seeds, soil, nutrients, and dome trays too. Everything you need for cultivation. Get top quality seeds from top suppliers like Canuck and wholesaler Nexus. Canadays. They've got all kinds of awesome cannabis novelties, clothing, and apparel. I know, right? It's a lot more than just a bong shop. Interested in gaining legal access? Canadays can help. They're a PACE information center. You know, people advocating cannabis education. Come by the shop and check it out. 19 Bridge Street West, Campbellford. Canadays. Have your say without saying a word. Canadays.ca.
When your problems in 10 feet tall, and there's no one you can call, you can't find your words to say, I'll remind you of that day.
Hello and welcome back. You're listening to the Pace Radio Show, and we are live as always here at lifestyleradio.net. You can also catch us at our sister station, 420radio.ca, and hey, even at the Pace Radio website, you can catch us there as well. Tonight on the radio show, we are joined by our guest, Dr. Ira Price of Synergy Health Services, and my joint host, Northern Ontario, Kim Cooper. Okay, Kim and Dr. Price, before the break, we were talking about employment and cannabis and all that. And we're going to continue on that theme during the break. During the break, there, we discussed a little bit about educating employers
Yeah, interesting stuff because, a lot of employers require some education. I mean, they're all running around blind. Nobody really knows anything. We know the propaganda that's been fed to us. Nobody really knows updated facts. So an education tool is a highly sought after resource, right now. And Dr. Ira, you've got something going on called CARE that would be maybe of interest to some human resources departments from around Ontario and abroad.
Yeah, so about a year and a half ago, out in California, I launched a program called Cannabis Accreditation, Regulation, and Education. The idea was initially to educate. It wasn't even initially for the workplace. It was to educate bud tenders and educate CannaCare specialists and educate people getting into the cannabis industry. And so I launched it out in California, and we do it here as well now. But then I was approached by a gentleman with a company called ICS, which I think International Cannabis Solutions. And his goal was to create a full package, a full consulting package for industry, so that different for cannabis use in the workplace. And I think it's so important because I had just come off of being an expert witness on a human rights case I can't talk about the case, but on a wrongful dismissal for cannabis, and I thought it was just perfect timing for it. And I mean, it's so important that employers understand that of course they know what their legal rights are, but they have to know that there's still a duty to accommodate, and what is the duty to accommodate, and what is the legal what are the legal ramifications for not having a specific policy in place, and what is it to have an educated cannabis policy? What is cannabis in the first place? If they don't even know about it, how can you create a policy around it? And so the framework, it was to create an entire package that employers could come to us, and we'd be able to go and educate their office staff, their human resource, their HR department on all of these different areas, such as what is the current legal view of cannabis, where the cannabis law is going, where are they right now, and what's cannabis safety in the workplace, what is the duty to accommodate, things like that. And how to, even more important for executives, they have cannabis, you have benefit packages through work, and you can use that to pay for your cannabis. Cannabis,
that would be nice.
Right off, yeah, well, you have them. No, you have them now. We have that already in the health spending accounts. Some companies have health spending accounts for their employees, and you can include cannabis in those things, and you can include write-off cannabis in your taxes for medical purposes. And so there's a lot of things that are just unknown, and how do you get that education out there? And that was the program that we've started to develop now, and hopefully it'll, I think it's really needed. Hopefully the employers will utilize that resource in order to become educated and provide not just things like that are happening to the unfortunate TTC worker, but where you're just, here's a blanket statement, and we're going to go find some other expert.
Yeah,
we believe is a medical cannabis expert to write a report for us without and state, it'll be positive in urine, and then we're going to say that means you're impaired. No. So how do we understand those things? So hopefully this program will be able to provide that education for employers.
Well, it's an absolutely much needed resource for sure. I encourage, any employers, across the listenership that is listening to this, get in touch with Dr. Ira about this. It's CARE with a K, excellent idea. And another great innovation coming out of Synergy.
I know myself.
I've been just for the employment thing, just to quickly for the employment work stuff. It's so CARE. I've adapted into this, so it's through ICS, but they can contact me directly through Synergy.
Excellent.
I've been contacted by a company, and they've asked some questions about that, rights and stuff, and how it was going to affect them at work. And in the end, this is something that I know I'm going to direct them to.
Yeah,
Well,
for sure. And I'm on the opposite end where I've been contacted by some patients and they're scared and wondering how is all this going to work because they don't know what their employers are going to do. So everybody is just very confused right now, not knowing what anybody's going to do and whether or not their jobs are secure.
Yep.
And rightfully so. Like if we look at the stigma that's being created under even the Trudeau regime's legalization, we call this legalization, but they're stigmatizing it again so harshly that that people are scared again to be using cannabis, because now you can't even use it outside. You have to use it in your own home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't use it. You can't even vaporize anymore. Like they make things so difficult. Like, and vaporization is a key here because it's so much better than combustion.
Yeah. How many victims were there when people were vaporizing before the law was put in?
Yeah.
Right. It's just crazy. To me, it doesn't make any sense. It was actually something that I even learned today from Abby. Funny, because Abby was talking about the smoke-free, the part of the legislation that threw in vaporizing cannabis, made it even more harsh than tobacco. You can smoke a cigarette outside, but you can't vaporize cannabis outside. Well, what if you're a patient? Does that make any sense whatsoever?
Yeah,
it doesn't make any, especially in the middle of having the largest opioid crisis in history, where we're telling people you have to go again into your special owned corner using your special owned bong where nobody's looking at you, and you have to be scared and use it in your own home.
It's almost like forcing the patients to go to the back alley.
Yeah,
it is. That's exactly what it's doing. It's putting the stigma back in it, where we were finally getting out of that stigma. And now I'm not sure. I'll tell you, for my patients, I'll write the medical note saying you should be vaporizing, and you shouldn't be vaporizing around your children, so you shouldn't be using it in the house. It's probably not good. You should probably use it outside. And because that's a form of harm reduction. And at the end of the day, harm reduction is key. We have needle exchanges, but we don't have vaporizing lounges. How do you have a needle exchange but not a vape bar?
Yeah,
exactly.
It doesn't make sense to me. So this, there's a lot of education that needs to get out there and be disseminated, and I'm not sure that the right people are being consulted for those things.
Patients that travel. I know a fellow from a town south of me. He travels into Toronto to one of the cancer hospitals, and that's what he would do. He'd walk over to Vapor Central while he was down there. I gave him a spot to get off the street and go in and medicate.
That's right.
Right, because that's a safe environment. That's harm reduction.
Is
it better that you go sit in your car? Is it better you go sit in your car? Right.
No. Yeah, you're not even allowed to sit in your car.
I don't live in the city anymore. I moved out of the city. So now when we come to the city, we stay in hotels. So what am I supposed to do? Stay in my hotel room and vaporize in my hotel room? Well, most hotel rooms are telling you can't do it in there either. So now what am I supposed to do? You've taken away the only safe place that I had when I come to visit the city.
Yeah.
That's right. It's a really unfortunate environment. You can't vape in your car. But if you're telling somebody they can't vape anywhere else and there's no safe environment for them, like there is a needle exchange, what are they going to do? They're going to sit in their car.
Yeah.
And then you're effectively saying, well, then you should be driving your car. No, it's not that. That's not the answer, and that's not how we create harm reduction strategies. It's not a harm reduction strategy. It's a harmful strategy, and we need to advocate against that.
Absolutely.
Big time.
Absolutely.
That's really where I'm trying to come at from an educational perspective. Problem is, I don't know who these guys are going to. Actually, I do. They're going to researchers they're not going to clinicians per se for when they go to physicians, to say what's actually happening from a ground level. They're going to excellent researchers. Don't get me wrong. They're amazing. We need the researchers who are just working in research for the most part. But you need the person that's on the ground floor in clinical medicine working to understand what's happening on the ground level and how we can make that change. And I'm not certain they're going to those people. Or if they are, those people are just going along with status quo in order to, get this stuff just pushed through, and they're not giving their truth. And we need to spread the truth. about it versus just going along with it.
And you are doing that and so much more at Synergy. I mean, last time we talked to you was just about a year ago, the last time that you were on the show. And that was a highly insightful show as well. And you had, big plans for what was going to take place at Synergy in that following year. And man, you accomplished all of them and so much more. You've still got the yoga classes going, but you've added in dinners. You've also added in, you do podcasts now. So you're on different venues with social media where you're live talking to different people, patients, people in the community. Just today, you did a podcast with lovely Amy Brown and Miss Abby Roach, who have also been on the show in previous episodes of our show. Wonderful fans of the show as well. Was that, you want to give a plug for the show that you did today?
Well, I mean, so I think within the last year, I mean, we started off in Hamilton. Synergy opened up in Burlington now, so we have 2 locations. The Burlington location does, we have physio, chiro, acupuncture, all that stuff, massage, and we have what I call V-Series yoga. So we have it's vape yoga, and so you medicate first, and then you could come and do yoga. And it's excellent for people that are in pain and unable to do it. We've been doing it for a year. Our population and our community is growing. When I came back from California, my goal was, what I realized was just to create community. That's really what I want to do. I want to create a community that spreads light around cannabis. And so everything we do within Synergy is towards that goal and towards what I call mindful consumption, where I'm trying to bridge the gap between the medical world and the lifestyle world or the recreational world. And that's through what's becoming known as mindful consumption. And that's really where Synergy is trying to position itself now. And so from that, I started, about 2 years ago, I wanted to develop this YouTube podcast called The Higher Estate. And so I shot my first video 2 years ago. We did, or was it 2016 when the Olympics were coming out? And I shot it with a couple friends, and actually Derek Pedro was there. You guys are going to hate me for a moment, but my daughter woke up, and I'm watching
That's
her.
Okay.
You have to give me a moment, okay?
That's okay. That's fine.
I really apologize. I want to continue. I will just give me.
Absolutely. Go and take care of your family, my friend.
Deal with family issues.
It
just shows the human side, because
right.
Yeah, hold on.
This guy, he's living his life. He took some time out of his life to do this podcast with us. He was anxious to come back on the show, so we made it work. And we really appreciate him doing that. But this is what happens on live radio.
That's right. It's going to be interesting. These podcasts that he's been doing. I hadn't heard this before, so I'd be interested where we'll be able to find these where people can watch them.
Yeah, well, I follow him. If you're on social media, that's mostly where all of these podcasts have taken place. I've seen a couple of he's done them on Facebook with Facebook Live, and he's done a couple on Instagram as well. And I'm on both of those social media aspects, so I get notifications when he does them, and I tune in. And he's with somebody different all the time, and they have a down to earth discussion, and and they answer questions live from people that are chatting in and joining them live on social media. They're quite informative. I encourage people to look up on social media and follow him for sure. And I think today he was on with Amy with High Fuckers, I believe.
Yeah, because that helps bring. I don't know if I want to use the word normalcy or whatever, but it changes the face of what people would think of cannabis, because for so long people always look at it as just a bunch of stoners that are just sitting around and eating pizza and getting stupid.
That's right.
Whereas this brings a whole new light to everything.
That's right. And that goes back to what I said before. More people are stepping out now and saying, hey, you know what? There's nothing wrong with this. You know what? I run my life. I run a professional business every day. I raise my family. I pay my bills. I raise my family perfect idea, perfect opening for Dr. Price there as I raise my family. And
back. Yeah, I'm so
that's
sorry,
what
guys.
we're doing. Hey, don't apologize for raising your kids, man. It's all good.
Thanks. I really apologize. I was hoping she'd stay asleep, but at least for a little bit, she woke up.
That's all right. Things happen.
Mr. Mom.
Mr. Mom. That's all right.
I am right now.
Yeah,
my wife actually teaches yoga, so she's out teaching tonight, and I'm home. So.
And you're home and you're live on the air with Pace Radio, and Dr. Ira is back with us. And just before he had to duck away for a moment, we were talking about all that's new at Synergy. You know, you were saying, you know, the yoga is going on, but there's so much more.
Yes. So let me. I was talking about the higher estate. So
right, the podcast.
My whole idea was to create community and bridge the gap between the medical community and between the lifestyle community through mindful consumption. And one of the best ways in my mind, there's a lot of there's podcasts out there, of course, but having somebody from the medical community facilitate something like this and bring together all different aspects of the lifestyle world and try to merge them and find common ground is something that I haven't really seen, because most physicians stay away from the whole lifestyle stuff. They, it's all medicine, blah, blah, blah. In my mind, the plant itself has meaning. In my mind, it's a whole community in the experience of cannabis itself. It's not just take this medicine and go. It's the whole experience of the plant. And so there has to be a common ground. So that's where the birth of the higher estate came from. And 2 years ago, I started it. But I never really did. All I did was one episode. It got taped over because the guys that were taping it went off to film the Olympics for CBC or CBS, I think it was. Yeah, it was my friend's buddy who was working for them. And it got recorded over. We lost all the footage, and I had Derek Pedro on it. Yeah, Derek is a good friend of mine. He's been here for about 25 years as a grower. And so then today, finally, was the first episode of the higher estate, and we're going to put it on Synergy TV on YouTube. Eventually, we'll have it up there when Synergy TV goes live, and it's going to hopefully be excellent and hopefully bridge the community between the medical world and the lifestyle world.
So I mean, we've expanded into Synergy TV. I mean, you're just educating the masses everywhere, educating doctors, educating employers, educating the masses.
Yeah, that's really the goal. The goal is education, and education's key. Education, breeds power and strength, and it's all about knowledge translation. It's not about me just giving something. It's about you being in charge of that medicine. In my mind, it's a medicine, but it doesn't have to be for everybody. That's fine. We accept that. But we need to empower people to at least have the knowledge about it to use it mindfully. And that's really what I'm trying to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Fantastic. I mean, you're doing so very much. I have a small, we'll have time to get this in before we go to break. I'm glad for that, because there's a small situation that I'd like to get your thoughts on as far as other doctors go. We're having a lot of situations where other doctors that are uneducated still and are not interested in receiving an education at all, they just want nothing to do with it. And that's fine. But if a patient goes to a doctor and has a referral form all ready to go and all filled out and says, okay, I understand you don't want anything to do with this, so can you just sign this referral so I can go see this guy who does want something to do with it and he can treat me? How can a doctor, even if it's legal, how can he ethically say, no, I'm not signing that?
Yeah, so a doctor technically can't, a doctor does not have to prescribe it. And it's like any medicine. A doctor doesn't have to prescribe any medicine.
Just a referral.
Right, exactly. I'm getting there.
Okay.
I'm getting there.
Easy, Kim, easy. Let him answer the question.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm shutting up. All right.
There are college policies on things like this. A physician doesn't have to provide cannabis to a patient, but a physician has to provide proper care. And that means if a patient is requesting a referral, it's going to be very difficult for them to get out of the idea of like the college may take offense to a physician refusing to refer a patient who's requesting a referral.
Okay.
So a physician, in my mind, is mandated to send a referral into somebody, or at least show them the direction of how to get there. They don't have to do it themselves, but they have to at least provide them with the care that the patient is requesting. In this case, it would be medical cannabis. Now, a physician has one way out of that, and the only way out of that the physician can say is, I don't think that it's a relevant medication. Now, if the physician is educated in order to make that claim, you have to have some significant education to state that I don't think it's relevant for this patient. But if you're coming out and saying, hey, I don't think it's for you, but you have no education, well, you better be sure that you have that education, or you're going to be held liable as a physician to that. Now, what I've done at Synergy is I've sort of taken away that even opportunity for the physician having to refuse. So if a patient is comfortable going to their physician, excellent. If they're not, you don't have to get the referral. I'll get it for you, because you come to me and I will call your physician's office and get your chart sent to me. And they can't refuse a physician requesting a chart. So it always gets sent. It's because we've run into that every so often. I'll tell you though, from in the past year, from a physician's perspective or from a medical perspective, medicine has pretty much embraced the idea of cannabis. And I feel like I almost felt like, at one point my job or my vision of why I started in this, 10 years ago or somewhere between 8 and 10 years ago, was to educate the medical world. The medical world has education now, and for the most part, they're on board. It's in guidelines. Prescribing cannabis is part of a national pain guideline. And so it's in there in medicine.
In there.
The people that need the people that need educating is the media now, like mainstream media. Those are the people that we're still trying to change, because their perspective is, let's still show that big blunt on the street corner. Let's still show this negative light of cannabis. And that, in my mind, is where the big effort needs to be, as well as building that mindful community and bridging the gap. Medicine has come along. If a physician doesn't want to refer, that for me, that's no problem. I took it out of the physician's hands to have to refer, and I said, tell the patient, just come into Synergy and I'll get your chart from your physician myself. And,
there you go.
And they're not, and let them try to refuse me.
Yeah, I guess the patient would just have to sign a release for them to. Yeah.
Comes in, we don't even have to come in. We send it to their email, a release of medical health records from their family physician or whomever, and then we get that information. Now, it doesn't have, if they don't have a family physician, you don't have to have a referral. It's not mandatory, because we have such a thorough intake. We practice proper medicine. That's what we do. If you're looking for recreational cannabis, it's not going to be through Synergy, but what you will get from a lifestyle within Synergy is everything around that. You can come in medicated and do yoga. You could come in and get physio and get medicated massages and things like that, because I do believe in the lifestyle of cannabis as well. But we don't prescribe cannabis to the lifestyle world. Now, in a legal market, unfortunately, the way that Ontario is doing it, in my mind, isn't the best way. But would we have sold cannabis? Certainly, but we can't, the way that it's turning out. But I'm not against I think we need to embrace the lifestyle market, especially trying to create that harm reduction through mindful consumption. So that's what we're doing at Synergy, creating a safe place for everybody.
Excellent.
A safe place that contains a host of information and education for all. Not only safe, but safe in the sense that the information you're getting is correct. Because some vapor lounges are completely safe as well, but I wouldn't go there for my information.
Hey, some of them carry some good information.
Yeah.
Some of them. I'm not saying all.
Well, hold on. So what Synergy is doing now is, I'll come in there, and that's what CARE does. We'll come in and educate the people that work within your clinic, within your dispensary, so that they have a standard level of knowledge. You shouldn't be, practicing medicine, of course, But if you're not a physician, but you can still provide some basic information about cannabis,
answer basic
standardized,
questions. Yeah.
and answer basic questions. So that's what CARE is doing.
That is awesome, and it's so needed because, patients, especially new patients, vapor lounges, head shops, bong shops, whatever you want to call them, that are out there these days, sometimes they are the first line of information for most patients. We don't know where to go. Somebody says, try cannabis. Well, we head to our local head shop and we say, I don't know what I'm doing.
Well, you can stop into Canada's.
Right?
You can stop into Canada's and get all kinds of treating yourself magazines with all kinds of medical information.
Yeah, right. So I mean, a standardized service like that is an excellent for sure.
All right, you two. It's time to go for a break.
All right.
Sorry to cut you off, but it's that time.
Okay.
All right, and a little bit, some more. Going to hear some more Killing Time Band, and then we'll continue our conversation with Dr. Ira Price. You're listening to the Pace Radio Show here at LifestyleRadio.net.
We're good friends till the bitter end. 'Cause I'll never bend. We're bound by our sins. Promise you this, my old friend.
Man, have you been to Canada's yet? Canada's, Campbellford's premier cannabis culture shop at 19 Bridge Street West. They've got bongs, oil rigs, grinders, and papers. Everything you need for consumption. They've got seeds, soil, nutrients, and dome trays too. Everything you need for cultivation. Get top quality seeds from top suppliers like Canuck and wholesaler Nexus. Canada's. They've got all kinds of awesome cannabis novelties, clothing, and apparel. I know, right? It's a lot more than just a bong shop. Interested in gaining legal access? Canada's can help. They're a PACE information center. People advocating cannabis education? Come by the shop and check it out. 19 Bridge Street West, Campbellford. Canada's. Have your say without saying a word. Canada's.ca.
Hi, this is Al Graham of the Pace Radio Show. Are you keeping pace, as in keeping people advocating cannabis education? If you're not, and you're a cannabis consumer, then why not? Others are working hard every day to help educate people about cannabis so you can enjoy your daily 420. Get involved and speak out. Be loud and proud so that you can keep pace. Tune into the Pace Radio Show every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to hear about people advocating cannabis education here on LifestyleRadio.ca.
Canada, the time to act is now. These days, your customers are seeking variety. Increase your earning potential by expanding your inventory with CC Nexus, Canada's largest cannabis seed wholesaler. CC Nexus stocks over 60 reputable breeders, including Canuck seeds, with a wealth of autoflower, regular, feminized, and CBD strains. All first-time customers will receive a free pack of Canuck seeds, plus a mug, t-shirt, and additional promotional materials. Add strains and increase your profit with CC Nexus, your Canadian-owned and operated wholesaler of cannabis seeds. Discreet, worldwide stealth shipping from Canada, supporting you locally. Call today, 1-844-843-7995, 1-844-843-7995, or visit us at ccnexus.global.
Let your love light glow. Just reach out, take that full step and kick down the door. Just let it all go.
Hey, we're back. Hey, thanks for tuning into our program tonight. We are live, as always, here at LifestyleRadio.net. Our bumper music, Killing Time Band. Everybody in the Toronto area loves going to watch them. We got to listen to their song, An Ounce of Goodness. And if you want to hear that song in its entirety and other songs, just head to their website at killintimeband.com. Today in the program, we've got Dr. Ira Price of Synergy Health Services and my joint host, Northern Ontario, Kim Cooper. Well, Kim, we're into the last segment. Where are we going to go? Where's the bus going now?
Well, now I put up something on social media that I don't do this very often, but I put up something on social media and I asked the listenership if they had any questions for the doctor while he was here. So I got a couple. I got a couple here for the doctor. This one is kind of interesting. Can't wrap my head around how to say it other than how he says it. So I'm just going to give it a straight up quote. Okay, of what Buddy's got going on here. So this is from Gary Cannon. So Gary Cannon, if you're out there, okay, I'm hearing many folks reporting THC is in some cases working as well as in other cases better than CBD for convulsive disorders. I believed you had to have BBB. So if so, when does oral THC tincture break the blood-brain barrier, or does it have to at all? Does that make sense to you, Dr. Ira?
It does. It's a complicated question. I'll give a short answer to a complicated question. So the question, I think what he's at the end of the day saying, and this actually comes down to what I was talking about probably earlier on, about which metabolite is it that causes impairment? Because not all THC breaks the blood-brain barrier. There's only a specific metabolite that breaks the blood-brain barrier. And if you're trying to use cannabis as an anticonvulsant, which, by the way, there's no real strong evidence in adult seizure disorders. There are some in things like Dravet syndrome for children. But if you are using whether it's THC or CBD, both of them are neuroprotective in their own ways. Both of them are helpful in their own ways for the brain. You do need THC to break the blood-brain barrier, and he's correct. You need to have a specific metabolite or breakdown of THC to do that. And you don't get that necessarily you won't get that from CBD. You will get that from THC, however. So you do need a specific metabolite that you get from THC to break the blood-brain barrier, which is basically in order to get across into the brain.
Okay, he has a follow-up question that is asking, is juicing buds for convulsive disorders, does that work?
Yeah, so the question is, will you break it down into the metabolite required for its anticonvulsant effects? My initial answer is, that's a great question. My initial thought on it is it has to be decarboxylated. It will likely happen through first-pass metabolism in your liver to a small extent. He's talking about THCV, and it will break down slightly through first-pass metabolism. Better off if it's heated up. Juicing it won't necessarily have any effect.
There we go. All right. Well, I hope
but you will get a lot of nutrients.
Yes. I know it's very good as a juice for the nutrient value. Absolutely. Fresh cannabis juiced is very good for the nutrient value. It'll make you healthy in the long run for sure. That I can attest to for sure. Difficult to do unless you have a very large garden and access to fresh cannabis plants on a daily basis, which is not, probable for most cases. So difficult scenario for most people to do. Okay, another quick one. Joey Burfort's out there, or is Burfort, I hope I'm saying your name right. How long does cannabis stay the same dose of cannabis stay effective in your system? After a while, do you have to increase the dose to have the same effectiveness like you do with pills?
Yeah, so he's asking about tolerance to cannabis. There is a tolerance to cannabis for the negative side effects, but not necessarily for the positive side effects. Interesting. What does that mean if we translate it? Those who use cannabis on a regular basis tend to be less impaired than those who use cannabis just, the one-off occasional user. But the effects of cannabis from a beneficial perspective don't appear to have too much of a tolerance to them. There is such a thing as tolerance, though, to cannabis on a slightly, not as much as there are to things like opioids. So my suggestion, what I do for patients in that situation, it's very easy to reset that that calibrated level, and that's to just dose change, strain change. We have so many strains of cannabis. You just change your strains. Don't use the same strain all the time. Or if you lay off of it cannabis for 3 days, it'll go back and reset your receptors.
Okay.
So you can do that. So there is tolerance. It's just a little bit. It's not the same, and it's mostly to the negative effects, not to the positive effects.
There you go. There you go. One
that was
last
good.
question. I got one more.
Oh, okay. Yeah, keep them coming.
Okay.
Keep them coming.
One more. I got topicals. Any good on tumors, or are they only good for your skin?
Great question again. So cannabis is fat soluble. It's not water soluble. So which means cannabis won't break the basement membrane of your skin. It means it won't be effective anywhere lower than just the skin level. The only way to make it more effective below the skin level is to make it water soluble. There are things out there that can make cannabis more water soluble, or THC more water soluble, and that's things like a DMSO, or even one of the terpenes, linalool, lavender, which is lavender. It helps to make things more water soluble, in which case it can be effective a little deeper. But for the most part, I wouldn't suggest it on tumors, for example. You can use it for surface skin issues.
Excellent. And I have one last question, and I think we already know the answer to this one. It's a pretty basic answer, buddy, but I'm going to get it out here anyway. How come we don't know more about cannabis, Doc?
How come? Because, hey, so let's go back. What do you want to go back?
Okay.
Actually, it's the last 100 years that we don't, and that's big business, man. Big business did a good job. Racism and big business did a great job of pushing down cannabis.
Yeah.
I think we all know that.
Yes. Oh, big time. Big time.
I mean, they're still doing it, but they're still doing it. Now they're doing it within the cannabis industry.
Yep.
Yeah, that's right.
Listenership for contacting me with your questions. That was fantastic. We'll have to do that again.
Yeah, that was great. I enjoyed that. That was good.
Right on. So what's now that we've done that, what's new? What's up new in the future for you guys at Synergy and for you yourself, Doc? What's next?
Well, I think the key now is education. The goal of Synergy, like I said, is to create a safe space and to create community. Come legalization, we're in a really tough situation because, as a medical clinic, if the government doesn't see it as a medicine, it's hard to make other people see it as a medicine. And they're taxing cannabis the same way that they're taxing medical cannabis, the same way that they're taxing recreational cannabis. And in my mind, that's a huge disappointment to medicine in general and to the population. It takes away there's three overriding or underlying principles when it comes to our healthcare system. And the most important one is universality. And that means that we have to have, every single person has to have equal access to medicine. And if you add a tax, first, there's no other drug I could think of that is taxed. There's nothing, no other medicine, not an opioid, nothing, zero taxes. And you're also saying, one, this isn't a medicine that everybody can access. So you're inhibiting the notion of universality in the delivery of our healthcare system, something that I think our liberal government needs to look closely at. And second, you're saying it's not a medicine. So what do you do in that situation? And it makes it very difficult for people like myself that advocate for the use of cannabis over things like opioids for specific diseases, of course, that we have evidence for. And it makes it very difficult. So I'm kind of disappointed in the moving forward and in the future of what the first iteration of legalization is looking like within Canada. First, I think they should regulate dispensaries, one from, just from a harm reduction perspective. Like I was saying, how is it that we have needle swaps or needle exchange, which I think is a great idea.
Crack pipes too, I believe.
But we don't have a vapor lounge. It doesn't make any sense. How is it that you take away that you make vaping cannabis worse than smoking a cigarette?
Yeah.
How does that make any sense? How is it that you're taxing cannabis medical cannabis the same as recreational cannabis. I'm not saying you shouldn't tax recreational cannabis. Sure. I mean, we've been advocating for that for the last 30 years. We've always said tax it, government.
Tax it.
And legal. That was the ply over the last 25 years. But we have it as a medicine, and as a medicine, it shouldn't be taxed, and it really takes away from it. So I'm kind of disappointed. And where synergy goes here, I mean, we're moving into we're in the natural health and wellness phase, like a wellness world. But we need to create community, because it's the community that supports us, and that we support. And without the community's help, well, it wouldn't exist. So especially not the way that cannabis is moving into this upcoming legal world. It's slightly disappointing.
On that tax part, they talk about part of their excuse for it was they were worried that people would use the medical program to avoid paying tax on their cannabis, which they could use recreationally instead.
So that's basically a slap in the face to doctors,
Sure.
isn't it?
Oh,
like that's saying
yeah.
doctors don't know the difference between somebody that's trying to scam them for meth.
No,
exactly.
You have politicians trying to act as doctors. I don't go acting as a politician. I don't know why you're acting as a physician. When you have your heart attack, are you going to go to your closest MPP, or are you going to go to a doctor? So I think that you have politicians acting as physicians, and I mean, our whole government has pretty much slapped medicine in the face to begin with over the last 3 years. So this is just another slap in the face to the physician, saying you can't do your job, and I'm offended by it. I've created guidelines for cannabis. I've created dosing guidelines for cannabis. I've created intake evaluations for cannabis. We have patients that have been coming to us for 7-8 years now because we practice proper medicine. We're not just coming to get legal cannabis, and the legal cannabis world will go somewhere else. You know, I've been doing surveys on patients, right? Why would you want another barrier if you're not there for medicine? You don't need the access barrier of going to a physician if you can just go down the street to a CCBO or whatever the heck you want to call these things, and get your cannabis, because a physician is another barrier, right? It's a barrier for somebody who's recreationally using cannabis, but it's a positive for somebody who's there for treatment of something and wants to be looked at as a whole person for medicine. And in that situation, I don't think you're not going to have very many people. I'll tell you, at least in our clinic, we don't have, I'm doing surveys of how many people are going to come back come legalization. And we have we'll have about a 20% attrition rate, which means 20% of our patients are probably going to just go to the legal world because they don't want the barrier of having to see a physician. I mean, at least 80% of our patients and we have, 2,700 patients that are medical patients, and most of them can't afford their cannabis as it is. And now you're adding another tax on top of it. It's not only a slap in the face to doctors, it's a slap on the face to medicine in general and to patients. Basically, it was a backhanded move by the government to legalize cannabis the way they did. The only people that gained was industry, right? The stocks went soaring.
Well, I have a theory. We don't have a whole lot of time left, but I have a theory, and I'm going to put this out there to you, doctor, because you're a doctor. I'm going to put my little theory out there to you. I think on the back of legalization, eventually, it's not going to happen this year or next year, but eventually, once it's established and cannabis is basically readily available, however means that becomes to be in wherever you live, but it's basically readily available, say like an LCBO type situation where there's stores everywhere, that kind of a thing, and it's readily available. I foresee them foregoing the prescription. I foresee them eliminating the medical market altogether and treating this much like your aspirin. If you need it, go to the store and buy it. You don't require a prescription. And I think that's going to happen rather rapidly within the governmental system on their part. I think they're going to advocate for that to try and eliminate the medicinal market, to eliminate the barriers that the medicinal market gives them.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is we're not treating, when you go to a LCBO, this was brought up today, does anybody talk to you about the the dangers of driving impaired? Does anybody tell you about any of the problems that you can get from cannabis, or any even benefits any of the problems you can have with alcohol, or even of the benefits used for, I don't know, as a antidote to something like a toxic alcohol of some sort, whatever? No, nobody talks about it. Even though they all have their smart serve, they're there to make money, period.
That's right.
So you put your beer, you put your wine, put your scotch on the table. They take your money. They tell you nothing outside of, can I see your ID? So if you have that market, if you have a medical market, specifically, the medical world that comes to our office looking for proper medicine to treat, whether it's their chronic pain, which strains, things like that, and you regulate it to the point that they have to go to something like an LCBO, they're going to get zero education. You can't just take away the medical world. Cannabis is a medicine. It is, and whether they're advocating to remove that barrier or not, we can't deny the fact of research over the last, last 30 years showing its effect on specific things. Yes, aspirin doesn't have a prescription to it. Although I'll tell you, if it was today developed, it would for certain have a prescription. Not only would that, it doesn't even have a DIN number either, because it was before DIN existed, interestingly enough, but yet it's covered by pretty much every insurance company.
So is cannabis.
Cannabis, right? Cannabis isn't covered by most insurance companies.
No, it's not.
But it should be.
Yeah.
So, what I don't want to see is the loss of the medical momentum, because I do believe it can revolutionize medicine. The problem is we have this dual system here, and we have a government that's advocating for its lack of medical property when they just don't have the proper guidance.
Now, Kim, to your question there, just so I have a friend of mine that actually even Tamara from Tamarawana, they're from Coffee and Cannabis. She was a part of the round table that's just been the government's going around talking to patients and stuff like that, other groups. And they're saying that they're not going to abolish the medical program. It's going to stay going.
Well, I hope that's true. I really, really do. But I just got this sneaking suspicion that in the long run, I think that's coming.
Yeah, I hear you. But you're going to have advocates like myself, and you have research out there researchers doing good research, like another project I'm working on, randomized trials on specific strains for specific disease process to get DIN numbers. Those kind of things are going to happen more often, and that will stay in the medical realm. But other than that, what I do see is the same thing that happened in Colorado. If you have 43% of a population using cannabis on a regular basis, or using cannabis at all in general, even if it's not a regular basis, and, of that percentage, only 10% is medical, you lose the medical drive. And because, you're losing medical drive for dollars in a capital market. Yeah. And that's how we're going to weed out medicine. It's not going to be because the ACMPR is going to change or whatever. It's going to be because all the money is going to be in the rec market.
Yeah. Well, that I can see happening as well, and that's another fear as well. If all the LPs are the ones that are supplying the so-called recreational, or I prefer the term non-medicinal, but the so-called recreational market, then what's left for patients? I mean, patients have shortages now, so there's not enough for patients now. Right. So what happens when rec comes?
Certainly, patients are suffering. And the way that the whole system is being set up doesn't make any sense. The way it's working in BC is different than Ontario. The whole thing doesn't make very much sense at all. And the truth is, they're cutting out a massive part of our cannabis industry. The people that started our industry, the people in the dispensaries, the small businesses, the things that are driving the Colorado market and driving the Nevada market and driving the California market, we're cutting all of that stuff out of here in Canada. And it's purely being driven by big business and the government. And they're not letting small businesses and the entrepreneur find their place. We have a potential right now to create an entire industry of people, basically a generation, my generation of the cannabis industry that, that's been marginalized, that can be productive productive to our economy and productive to society and productive to and find their place within society and find a group and demarginalize that population. But instead, we're just remarginalizing them and creating more of a stigma around cannabis. And that's where my fear is around the way that we're legalizing it here.
There you go.
Before we wrap up here, I got a question for you, and that is, as far as the research into cannabis, I've had some patients talk to me about their concern that the research will stop.
Yeah. So that was, I've been saying that on the radio for the last year. Is my biggest fear in legalization is that we lose our research momentum because the money is going to just be thrown into recreational cannabis. Here's the good news on that. The good news is there are still companies out there that are focused on medical markets, and there are universities that are coming together to collaborate and create research agendas around cannabis. And most of them are trying to focus on the harms of cannabis. Here's the good news. Whenever somebody does research on harms, they usually find a benefit. That's what's happened throughout history, which is great.
Yeah, Dr. Grinspoon. Same thing with Dr. Lester Grinspoon. That's right.
Well, look at Tashkin. He's like the biggest example of that, you know?
Yeah.
And so all these guys try to prove how bad it is and then just end up being big advocates for it. So I welcome all of those studies because they usually pan out to be positive studies. And if they are negative, we need to know that stuff too, because we need to create we have to have a full profile of what we're prescribing. Yep. So, from that perspective, I'm hopeful slightly. I know that, I'm still doing research around it, and I hope it doesn't stop. But my fear is in North America anyways. Germany, it's a medical market still. A lot of the places, Mexico, it's still a medical market. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of the European countries, it's still a medical market. So research is going to be coming out of there quite heavily as well. So if we lose our North American-centric perspective, there's still going to be research. My fear is that, North America, we lose that perspective. I just hope we don't.
Yeah, absolutely. And talking about, the universities doing studies, one of our guests that'll be coming up later on at the start of this year will be Professor Judith Stamps, who has just, begun a brand new university course at the University of Victoria, and she'll be teaching about the science of cannabis.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Didn't know that.
Yeah, I believe it was Loyalist in Belleville. They're doing cannabis research as well. Loyalist College. There was something in our local paper.
There's a couple places. There's a couple places that are. McMaster started its own research sort of agenda on cannabis. I have a research company that does research on cannabis. So I just don't want to lose that medical momentum.
Either do we.
Yep.
Well, Doctor, we're down to our last couple minutes here. We could talk all night with you.
Yeah,
we could. We have a blast.
We could, but our time is running short. So we're at the shout out portion of the show.
Correct.
Okay. Well, first, I am still hopeful. I don't want to just say it's all doom and gloom. We are all. Look where we came from. Even 30 years ago, where you guys you wouldn't put your names out there, right?
That's right.
And where everybody had a pen name. Mine is Dr. Ira Price. That's not my real name, of course.
There was a time where people wouldn't even want to talk about it. Well, now it's in the news every day. So.
That's right.
That's right. So we have come places, and places like Synergy Health, like my clinics at Synergy Health Services, we're working towards that. And if you are a patient and you feel like you need somewhere to go, or you just want a community that understands, that's what we're here for. And or if you want, what's kind of cool is our cannabis retreat, that through Cannabis Retreats. You could check us out on Instagram. It's really cool. We threw our last one in Joshua Tree, California. The next one's going to be somewhere in Northern California, probably around April 20th. It's going to be really cool as well. Check it out. We run care through that still. So you get certified with the cannabis accreditation through that. That's my program that we run through it, and that's really cool. And,
that's the best. Is that the best way? Is it the best way for people to get a hold of you, to get a hold of care?
Yeah, the best way to get a hold of me is either through Synergy or Cannabis Retreats. So actually, the truth is, go to my Instagram, which is Synergy_Health_Services. That's the best way. Or my Facebook, which is Dr. Ira Price, my public page. Those are the two best ways to get in touch with me, is Instagram and Instagram at Synergy Health Services or Facebook. That's the best way. And then you can ask me anything you want. And I'm always open.
Yeah. And we'll have all your contact info up on the link on the site as well on social media after the show.
Beautiful.
Super.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, guys. I had a blast.
Oh, we always love having you on. We love having you on, Doctor. You're so insightful. You're out there with the information for everybody. You're researching constantly. You're up to date. You're definitely one of the up and coming movers and shakers in this country as far as cannabis research and education goes. And it's always a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you so much, guys. You're wonderful.
Thank you. It was great having you on, and I hope the little guy's good for the rest of the night too.
Yeah.
Me too. Me too. I know. I'm pacing the front hallway, hoping my wife comes home too, because I got to go to work tonight. I work all day. Yeah, now I work cannabis all day, and now I go to the emergency room at night.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, wow.
On night shift, yeah.
He's on night shift ER. Oh, my God. And doing a show with us in between, we so appreciate it, I tell you. You could have taken this time as downtime, but instead you chose to be with us, and it's an honor to have you.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, all right. We'll let you go. Right. We'll wrap up.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right.
Bye-bye. Okay.
Yeah,
all
great.
Right, that was great.
Always. Yeah,
for sure. It's great when he gives time to the cannabis community to do stuff like this. Obviously he's a very busy guy. So.
Yeah, on his way to the ER,
Yeah.
So if you have any issues tonight in Hamilton and you wind up in the ER, say hi to Dr. Ira.
Yeah. Hey, I heard you on the radio tonight. Okay, talk about radio. Next Wednesday, Alicia joins me. Her scheduled guest is Owen Smith. He's a former joint host here on the Pace Radio Show. He's also the man behind one of Canada's greatest cannabis court victories, isn't he, Kim?
Yes, he is. Owen.
Yes.
And
I haven't talked to Owen in a while, so this is going to be good. I'm really looking forward to that. So
yeah, it's going to be great to catch up with him. I'm going to be tuning into that for sure.
Good stuff. Okay, you can get the Pace Radio Show on Facebook. You can find us on Twitter at Pace Radio. You can find us online at Pace-Online, as well as on Instagram. We're there as well. Thank yous as always to our cannabis seed wholesaler sponsor, CC Nexus. CCNexus.global is their website. Also to Al Rapp. He's in the middle of moving. And he still was able to bring us to air. Thanks, Al. We really appreciate the extra work there. Thank you to our guest, Dr. Ira Price, Synergy Health Services. He was on in March.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
just under a year.
It was good to have him back on. Yeah, have him back on, get an update. We'll have to have him back on again in the future as well.
Yeah, for sure.
So, Kim, thank you as always. And
pleasure.
Yeah, our listeners, we always got to throw a shout out to them as well, because without them, we wouldn't have any listeners. We got to have people, got to educate people and spread the knowledge. And, as I say, for every one person, you've got a couple others that learn as well. So
that's right. So thanks so much for tuning in, everyone.
That's right. Okay, we're off. Good night, and we'll see you next week.
Good night.
Good night.
What are you doing? Nothing? Why not?
Trying to get on this Lifestyle Radio website.
Sounds like a cool website.
Yeah, it's alright. Oh, wait, I might have it.
You might have it.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
The opinions expressed during this show are those of the individual participants and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of their associated organizations or Lifestyle Radio.